I made it just about in time. Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, July the 30th, 2020 something. I hope you're doing well this evening. This is Macro Talk. This is where we talk about macro, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, kind of. Macro, micro, somewhere in the middle. It's actually the first of 5, count them, 5 events this week. Whose idea was that? Oh, that would be mine. That was my idea. We're going to do a 2-part discussion on photomicrography, and I'll explain why in just a minute. But that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be some different territory, and I am going to turn off the fan that's been keeping me cool. Hang on. There we go. Do you have fans that come to keep you cool? Okay, you can leave now. Thank you. Yep. No, it's an electric fan, and I had to turn it off. It was making too much noise. Anyway, 2-part talk about photomicrography and what it is tonight. We're going to compare photomicrography with macro photography, what we're all used to, and there are some things in there that might surprise you, and it might be new to some of you. In fact, talking about new to some of you may be new to me. I've been a bit remiss in welcoming newcomers. If this is your first visit to one of our live streams, welcome. We are here for you, and if you're a macro photographer or want to become one, or are interested in learning about it, this is the place to be, because we talk about different macro stuff every week in multiple different places. And you can read about it on my blog, or you can come to the live streams or watch the videos. There's all kinds of entertaining ways to get better at macro. So if you're new, welcome. If you're not new, but you're one of my most precious Patreon supporters, thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting me. I absolutely could not do this without you guys. This is I almost said a full-time job. This is 3 full-time jobs that I couldn't do it without your support. So thank you so much. And for everybody else, welcome. So we're going to do the 2 parts on photomicrography. The other thing we've got coming up is a Zoom on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, 10 till noon. Zoom, for those of you who don't know it, is a Patreon Zoom meeting. We invented it, and the idea is that anybody who is a Patreon supporter gets together, anybody who wants to, gets together on Saturday morning every other weekend, and we spend 2 hours talking about macro. And this week it's going to be heavily geared towards gear. Did I mean to say that? Yes, I think I probably did. Heavily geared towards gear. We're going to be talking about rigs and setups and problems with setups, breakthroughs with setups. We're going to be looking at your latest developments, whatever you've come up with. The only rig we're not going to be looking at is mine, because it's not set up yet. I just haven't got around to it. That's how busy I've been. It's going to be right there though, so not too much longer. So that's Zoom. Then on probably the same day, possibly the day after, I will be releasing the results of the competition for July, which I was getting ready to cancel in disgust because there were only 3 entries. Now there are some 300 entries. So thank you. Thank you for going to the grocery store, finding something to take a picture of, and taking some really, really cool pictures. So I'm excited about that. I have a special guest judge, Harold Hall. Harold, who helped me last month, is also going to be helping me this month, but this month we're going to do it in a video live, so you'll get to see the whole sausage making process of how we arrive at winners. So that's going to be coming up. Well, we'll be making that video, I think, on Friday or Saturday, and then I'll have it ready to go hopefully by Sunday, so keep your eyes open for that. What else? Well, there's a video coming out. There's a video of an interview that I did this last weekend. I was hoping to have it out by now, but again, a little bit on the busy side, haven't quite finished it yet. But that was an interview with Charlie Krebs. and it is Charlie Krebs that is the reason for this week's discussions on photomicrography. If you don't know who he is, you will by the end of today, and you will know him well by the end of the interview. It was a fantastic interview, one of the most enjoyable, long 3-hour interview, really not an interview, more of a discussion, and I'm going to cut that back just a little bit. I may put the full-length interview on Patreon, but we'll cut it down just a little bit so so YouTube doesn't have a cow over it. But he is such a fascinating guy. He is such a consummate artist, and he gets the tech of it too. So you'll learn so much watching that interview, but you'll also hopefully learn a lot this week about the kind of photography that he does, because that's largely what he is all about, is photomicrography. So it's all going to tie together. This whole week is like it's like a whole cosmos in a teacup. Is there such a thing? There probably is, and it's probably called a black hole, and that's probably not a good thing for your live stream to be about. But anyway, so that's the presume, and I kind of wandered all over the place there and mentioned other things too. Why we're doing this this series of photomicrography live streams this week. But let me go back to the competition for just a minute, because I am going to do something I never do. Well, I did once before and got in trouble for it, but I'm going to try it again anyway. I'm going to tell you tonight what the subject is for the August competition. And once I confirm it, I'll also tell you what the subject is going to be for the September one, if I can get in touch with Angie, because I think it's flowers in September. Don't hold me to that. August, however, is going to be something entirely different, something we've never done before, and something that's going to be incredibly challenging, but incredibly good fun to judge, which is why I picked it. What we're going to be doing in August is, I'm calling it My Tiny Universe, because I can call it whatever I want, and that occurred to me. But My Tiny Universe is, you get to use whatever props you want, and you tell a story in a scene, in a photograph, that is on the macro scale. Now, you've seen photographs, I'm sure. There's a guy, I can't remember his name, very popular for a while, who was taking pictures of tiny little figures, plastic figures, of men working in ditches and what have you, but working with something that showed the scale that they were actually at. So it was like whole scenes that were fascinating and fun to look at. There are a million other examples. For example, you could have a little stick figure of a girl swinging in a swing that's dangling from a plant or a flower, something like that. I don't care what it is or how you do it. You can do a landscape using just sand and dirt off the ground. Whatever you can come up with. But it has to be a story, a landscape, a portrait, a family group, a lifestyle thing. Doesn't matter. It just has to be done macro, and you cannot composite. You cannot composite, which means you actually have to build a tiny set of something. And I cannot wait to see what you come up with. This is going to be the biggest challenge creatively, I think, that we've done yet. But give it some thought, because if you can make it fun and funny or exciting or interesting or intriguing, just imagine the possibilities. You have free reign to do whatever you want. You just cannot composite. So don't be shrinking stuff down and putting it in another picture. That won't count. So you have to get really creative. But if you have any questions, let me know ahead of time before you submit your pictures, and I'll get them answered for you. But yeah, My Tiny Universe. I can't wait. I'm so excited about that. Okay, so I was going to tell you some more about the Krebs story. That's Charlie Krebs, his story, why he came on to talk to me and what we talked about, but I'm not going to. I don't want to use up too much of our time today, and he says it better than I do in the recorded interview, so watch that. I was going to make a joke about the Krebs cycle, and then I realized that not that many of you went to medical school, might not know what the Krebs cycle is, probably would have been a bad joke, as that just was then. So we'll skip that. The Krebs video, which you do know about, will be coming out, I hope, by the weekend. 3-hour video, do the math, that's a fair amount of editing. It'll take a little while. Okay, there was one other thing I wanted to talk about. Some of you have some of you have asked me, do I really have a bass drum pedal underneath my desk? The answer is yes, I do. I use it for stress relief and for keeping time with the music that I listen to. A real drum pedal. It's not connected to a drum, but if anybody has a bass drum that they don't need anymore, please let me know. I'll buy it from you. I'll have to cut a hole in the front of the desk, but that isn't very satisfying, that clunking noise it makes. But yes, I do. And so the other question was, people have been saying, hey, how's it coming with that cross-polarizing thing that you were going to make 6-7 years ago? We forget, it's been that long. Well, I started production this morning. No, I started production yesterday morning. The days are bleeding together. And I have got most of the parts printed for the first run. Now, there are some VIPs who helped pay for this, who helped help me, not just with the printer, of course, which is Mr. Nelson. Thank you, Jan, without whom there would be no project of this type. But everybody who's chipped in to getting the equipment that I need, or the parts and the filament and everything. I have been putting everything together. I've been printing for hours and hours at a time, and have the whole thing ready to go, and I am so excited about it and so pleased with how it's turned out. I can hardly contain myself, and I'm probably going to do a video about it so that you can see all the steps if you want to follow along and do it. The last piece of this was finding a light source, because the whole thing's self-contained. You just plug it in, flip a switch, and you're ready to view under the microscope or take pictures on your stand. Everything was working. Everything has gone wrong, but I've had to fix it by redesigning it, making new parts, coming up with a different idea, and the result is so exciting and so cool that I just can't wait to show it to you. And I'll show you part of it. No, I won't. No, I won't. Yes, I will. No, I won't. I won't. It'll be more fun, I think, to watch the whole thing come together. Yeah. Those of you who are awaiting one of these devices, you just saw part of your device. I'm going to be assembling them in my free time over the next few days, and hopefully before too long, maybe within the week, I'll be shipping them out. So yeah, and then it'll be time to make the video, but that video will be fun. Okay, enough already. What else? There is one last thing. The picnic. Should I say the picnics? Because this thing is spiraling out of control in a most delightful way. Did you see the moose I killed, by the way? I didn't kill it. It came dead. It's stuffed. Not a stuffed moose head. It's a stuffed toy that looks like a moose head, but I rather like it. I think I stole it from one of my kids, because I don't think anybody gave it to me. But anyway, the picnic. We're on for September the 7th, which is a Saturday in about a month's time. And I think, after giving it a great deal of thought, about a minute to a minute and a half's thought, I think we're going to do it here in Peoria, because I have talked to now people in both directions that are quite a long way away, and I can't move the thing without hurting somebody. So I'm figuring, you know what, I might as well do it where I live, so that at least I'm here. if nobody else shows up, I don't end up driving 3 hours just to talk to myself. I can talk to myself here like I usually do. So I'm thinking it's going to be either here or in this immediate environs. The reason, or one of the several reasons, is I know people and I know places around here where we can go, for one thing. I also have access to a house which I'll need to talk to Laura about. I meant to talk to her before this began, but it's actually her house. But I think she might be willing to let us meet in here if it rains. So we already have a roof over our heads if we need it. And I'm also thinking about talking to a friend of mine about catering the picnic. I better not say any more, because if he doesn't do it, I'll get in trouble. But Laura probably has already figured out who I'm talking about. But it would be the coolest picnic you ever went on if we're able to do it there. So this is promising to be a real blast. Somebody, I shouldn't say who because I didn't get permission, but somebody is actually getting in an aeroplane and flying here to the picnic. Now, I assumed when I heard that he was just joking, pulling my chain. That's the kind of thing I would do. Somebody said they were having a picnic. I'd say, oh, super, great. When is it? I'll get a ticket. No, he's actually flying here. So I was completely nonplussed, didn't know what to say, but it's an indication that people are actually planning on coming, and quite a few, and I am so excited and so grateful. So anybody who actually does get in an aeroplane or in any kind of vehicle, public vehicle to transport here, all you need to do is tell me when you arrive, and I will arrange to get you wherever we're going, so that you don't have to rent a car or anything like that. There's not a lot to do in Peoria that I've discovered that doesn't involve macro photography, that is. So yeah, you won't be distracted, but if you're interested, you need to let me know, because all of a sudden I now have a list of about 15 names. It will accommodate everybody. We'll find a way to do that. But and if you can't make it, but you live in Scotland, there's going to be one next year. We've already got this underway. Angie has agreed to take care of the arrangements on the ground over there. I'm going to be in the borders of Scotland next August, and we're working on a date right now. But Dunbar, which is on the beautiful scenic North Sea. The North Sea is not very scenic or beautiful, but that spot is. Dunbar is gorgeous, and I'll be there, and that's kind of right between Edinburgh and where Angie lives. So we're thinking maybe right in that area. It is gorgeous. So anybody who's from the borders of Scotland, Edinburgh, heck, Scotland is not that big a place. Anybody from Perth or Glasgow or the northern half of England, make a plan. I'll give you a date as soon as we have it, and plan on coming to that picnic. Yeah, I'm so excited. I can't believe that people are actually interested in doing this, and we're going to put on a good day. There's going to be lots to learn and lots to have fun with, and can't wait. Simply cannot wait. I've already been asked by several people if I would also do one of these in the top left-hand corner of America, which is Seattle and surrounding areas. So that is also in the offing. Don't know when that would be because of weather and everything, but if you're in the top left-hand corner, as I know many of you are, keep an ear peeled. No, tuned. Yeah, you keep an eye peeled and an ear tuned, or you keep it to the ground. Whatever you do with your ear, do that so you don't miss when I announce that. And hopefully within 3 picnics within 12 months, it's going to be so much fun. Was that enough announcements? Can I just quit for the rest of the day? I feel like that was enough work, really. Considering my salary, I should probably keep going. I got my editing tablet finally found in the box it was hiding in and set up, so all I need now is a camera, take some pictures, and I'll be back in business. So What is exactly is photomicrography? And how does photomicrography differ from macro photography? They even sound fairly alike. In fact, there's only a couple of letters difference, so surely they are about the same thing. Well, they're absolutely not the same thing, though, like many things, at their extreme, they do tend to butt into one another and overlap a little bit. And it's a bit complicated, but to simplify things, we're going to use a description that I have come up with that fits for this conversation. That is that macro photography is something that people do who want to make images of small things, smaller than you would be able to take with regular equipment, but they use special modified camera equipment to take those pictures so that they can display these photographs at life size or greater. And you do it just using the camera and lenses, bellows, extension tubes, and other equipment we're going to talk about. But it is a camera skill. It's a camera based process. Photomicrography is different. It is where you take images of small things using modified microscope equipment. And that's the difference. At the end of the day, they're both cameras with microscope equipment. That's all your extreme macro rig is. It's a homemade microscope. But the difference is kind of where you start, where your interest and your process begins, whether it's with a camera in your hand or peering through a microscope, that determines which of these areas you end up in. You can do both. I mean, Charlie's a great example of somebody who is a master of both. In fact, Rick is another person who is a master of both. Rick Littlefield, that is, and many of you as well. But there are folks who just do photomicrography. All they do is they examine the things of interest to them through a microscope, and when they see the things that they like and they want to document, they take pictures using specialized adapted microscope equipment to record the image. That doesn't mean those images are just, by the way, documentation snapshots like my microscope images are. Not at all. These can be fantastically intricate, beautifully lit macro photography type subjects just done through the microscope. And similarly, those of us who like doing high magnification macro photography will end up using extension tubes, relay lenses, microscope objectives even, it's all in the name, and a camera, of course, in order to build our own infinity corrected microscope so that we can take pictures of the things that we normally do only in higher magnification. We are adapting what we do with the camera to get the pictures of the small things. They are adapting what they do with the microscope to record what they're looking at. So there's loads of overlap between these two, obviously. And one thing that you'll notice if you sniff around this long enough, you'll notice that they tend to attract different kind of personalities. Photomicrographers, I almost said micrographists, and I don't think that's a word. Photomicrographers tend to be the scientific type, oftentimes like my friend Dr. Reddy at UAB, whose rig we looked at last week. People who spend most of their life looking through microscopes because they're pathologists or metallurgists. For them, slapping a camera on a trinocular head is a piece of cake, and from there they work on and develop their skills with lighting and everything until they become a true artistic photomicrographer. Yet the type of person who often ends up in macro photography is often somebody who's already been taking pictures for yonks using all manner of different cameras and lenses, and got introduced to the idea of macro, maybe with a macro lens or maybe with a reverse prime 50, something like that, and discovered the joy of getting close-up pictures and then really close-up pictures. That tends to be more of a process, and it tends to attract more of the artistic leaning group, but that's really neither here nor there. So macro photography then is a kind of photography. Photomicrography is a kind of microscopy, if you want to look at it that way. All right, typically in macro photography we use a camera. Most often it's either a full frame or an APS-C. I was talking to a friend today about some incredible old Nikon equipment that they've come across, which actually is large format, not medium format, large format microscope photography with a setup that Nikon used to make called the NicoPhot, I think. NicoPhot? Microphot. Macro, yeah, I can't remember, I'll have to look it up, but it's a gigantic, enormous machine with big bellows that uses like a pregnant EL Nikkor lens, and apparently takes fantastic pictures at very high magnification. I want one of those things. If you have one in the attic, send it to me, and we'll do a video on it. So the typical magnification range for what we do, and I say typical, there are many exceptions to this, but most of the time macro photographers are photographing at 1 to 5 close-up type stuff, 1 to 2, all the way up to maybe 5 to 1 or even 10 to 1. It's not uncommon for us to use objectives that get us 10 to 1, sometimes even 20 to 1, but that's you're out on the bell curve there. Not a lot of people are doing that, but that's typical for macro photography. And photomicrography, typically the equipment is a research grade microscope of some kind that oftentimes has been modified to allow a focusing motor to be attached to it, so that with the right kind of controller you can take the focus out of your hands and allow a machine to focus at intervals through your subject, so that you can do focus stacking just like we macro photographers do. But what's different is very typically the photomicrographer is working at 10 times magnification, or 40, or 60, or 1,000. No kidding. That is the kind of range that the photomicrographer will be taking pictures of subjects. Now, there's a couple of things about that degree of magnification. I've said this before, probably will say it again, that the more magnified you get with your equipment, the more your subject begins to look abstract. And that is very true, and it's one of the things that kind of separates the macro from micro. Can I just call it that to save me having to remember where to put the photo word every time? Let's do that. So when you look at typical examples of work from, say, a classic micro like Charlie, and you compare it to the kind of stuff that I do, you're more likely to see recognizable macro structures, as in large structures like an insect, and know that it's an insect. But very commonly at high magnification, the kind of stuff that Charlie's taking pictures of, you look at it and go, wow, but what is it? Because we're talking about close-ups that are far closer than the organism. That's not always the case by any means. As you will see when you watch the video, Charlie takes pictures of complete organisms that you could fit 15 of them on the slide. I mean, they're so teeny tiny. Would you like me to show you a couple of his pictures so that you have an idea what I'm talking about? I can do this because I was given permission to use a couple of these pictures that aren't in the video. I'm not going to show you anything that's in the video because I wouldn't want to spoil the video for you, for one thing, but I definitely would like for you to see some of these. But that will require that I find them. and that may be a problem. Yeah, because they're not immediately where they're supposed to be. That doesn't matter though. I'll find them while I'm talking. But Charlie said that many of the images that I know where they are. They're on the other computer, but I've got it hooked up too. So many of the images that Charlie gave me to share were used in the video, and you'll get to see them there and hear him discussing them. But a few of them that we didn't get to are the ones that I have been given permission to share with you. So I see what the problem is. I changed the order of the images while I was trying to save some files that I was in the process of losing just the other day. So hold on just a moment and I will get them. You know what? I hate when I do this, but we're going to have to. We'll circle back on that. I'll keep looking while I'm talking. But anyhow, the equipment modifications that we as macro photographers need to make can vary from virtually none if we're using a camera with a macro lens, though oftentimes we need to add special kind of flash or continuous lighting. But typically we don't have to do a whole lot of very involved stuff like reversing lenses. Reversing lenses, adding extension, using diopters, all of these things are fairly straightforward. It gets a little bit more complicated as you get into the higher magnifications, especially when you're building your infinity corrected microscope setup using both extension tubes and some kind of a relay lens or a tube lens, basically building a microscope. And we need specialized lighting, especially as we get into higher and higher magnification. Lighting, of course, is the biggest of all topics in macro photography, and it is no less important, though a little less complicated, in photomicrography. I did find the pictures, thank goodness, and I will share a couple of these with you to give you a little bit of an idea what a micro does. So let me share this screen with you, which means I'm going to have to drag things around, cover up your messages for a minute, though I will uncover them shortly. We actually did talk about this particular image, and it is in the video, but I don't think Charlie will mind. Once you see this, you're going to want to look at the video yesterday anyway. You've seen lots and lots of pictures of butterfly scales and moth scales. This is how a photomicrographer takes pictures of moth scales or butterfly scales. This is actually, I'm not sure what the species is, and in fact Charlie didn't have it written down, but the difference between what we do and what he does is when you get into the pixels and you start looking at the kind of detail that this master of photography is able to pull out of a simple picture of a butterfly scale. Have you ever seen such fine detail? We talked for quite a while in the video, in the recording of our interview. We talked quite a bit about equipment, and he was kind enough to provide me with a bunch of photographs of his gear, which is actually, a lot of it you're going to look at it and say, well, it looks like that stuff Dr. Reddy showed last week of his gear. Well, his gear was copied directly from Charlie's, so that's why they look alike. So the overall feeling you get when you look at the work of a master photomicrographer is one of incredible preservation of detail. admittedly, you're not going to see very many photographers who come close to this guy when it comes to the quality of his images, but it's something for us to aspire to. I'm going to show you another picture. Again, my apologies to Mr. Krebs, because we do talk about this in the video too, but I have to show it to you because it is such a spectacular photograph. You've all seen pictures of aphids. We take lots of pictures of aphids. They're very good to look at. This takes aphid photography to a completely different realm, in my opinion. And yeah, the idea of looking at that LA freeway that gets super congested, if cars were aphids, this would be that picture. You cannot find a soft spot, a blemish on this photograph. Not that I'd want to look for one. It's just it's absolutely beautiful. And this is done, like everything else I'm going to be showing you, through a microscope. Through a microscope with a camera bolted on top of it. Can you believe it? It's hard to believe. I'm going to show you one more to give you a you've seen tiger beetle pictures, one of my absolute favorite subjects. Actually, this is not a tiger beetle. It's a different beetle that gosh, I can't remember exactly which species it was. It's unimportant. This is the kind of picture you take of a beetle if you were using Charlie's microscope and were a good photographer. This is detail, the likes of which I just have to dream about being able to take. So this is the close-up of the integument, or the outer shell of a I can't remember what the species is. It's one of those big ones that live in Mexico, the very colourful ones. It'll come to me in a second. But look at that detail and look at that colour. Just amazing. Like I say, we talk a lot about equipment, and equipment is a big part of this, but it's not that big a part, not compared to the sheer, unadulterated talent. So, the equipment modifications in photomicrography, the modifications are more to the mechanical aspect of the microscope. I've shown you the microscope focus block. You'll notice that absolutely nothing else has been done to it since I last showed it to you. That's not true. I made a new part for it, and just it's the paint is drying on it right now. But seriously, I made a new part for this because one of the knobs was broken, and it turns out I needed it. But the modification that the microscopist will make is to put a motor on the focus block so that he can control the fine focus of the device. There is no photomicrograph that is going to take that much travel, and you don't need but a tiny fraction of that. These things don't have to move far, but they need to be controlled, so they need a motor and a controller put on them. And that's going to be a video too, putting one of these things together, but that's for another time. So that's how they have to modify their microscopes. They have to be able to focus stack with them, because at 50x or 70x or at 100x, there is no such thing as single shot photography, because nothing is thin enough for you to get it all in focus. You're only going to have sub-micron fractions of depth. No depth of field whatsoever. So that's what you have to do. You have to modify your scope. You have to come up with ways to get light on your subject in an even and pleasing way. And it's another thing that we talk about in the interview. He's got some really fantastic, cool, brilliant ideas I've never thought of before, and we talk all about that kind of stuff. So there are things you need to do to your microscope to use it for this, just as there are things we need to do to our camera or our lenses if we're going to do close-up photography. So another difference, and again, more exceptions to this rule than rule keepers, but oftentimes, very oftentimes, the microscopist is using a vertical rig. And the fact that he or she is using a vertical rig explains some of the tendency to select certain subjects for viewing. And that's really going to be the topic of the subject on Thursday, where I want to really get into the kind of things that the micros photograph and why and how, so that if you're interested in this kind of thing, you'll have some things to think about shooting. But in general, I like to use a horizontal rig because I'm shooting larger subjects, and I like to make them appear to be vital, moving, alive, and whether that's simulating flying or crawling or whatever. So I find that easier to do and to compose my shots in a horizontal orientation, and because of that, I've got used to using a horizontal orientation for everything, even things that would normally be easier shot vertically. I've figured out ways to shoot them horizontally because that's what I'm used to. However, the vertical guys come at it from a completely different angle. Yeah, they do. 90 degrees, completely different. Because many of the things that they're looking at are alive and moving and very, very small. Soil mesofauna, aquatic plants and animals, for example. And a great deal of what Charlie photographs are these very, very tiny creatures, all the way down to submicron size nematodes and you name it. He photographs it, but oftentimes he's photographing it in liquid underneath a cover slip on a slide, and that is a very different prospect. He couldn't do that in the horizontal aspect because, well, the water would run off the slide and the thing would go with it. So big difference in the two, and you can't really compare the two for ease of use without considering the subject you're shooting. I would argue that they're both about the same until you start picking subjects that can only be shot in one orientation or the other, or are easier to do that way. But certainly you buy yourself a lot more control of living aquatic creatures when you're shooting vertically down on them. There are things that you can do to limit their mobility, or at least limit how far they wander. Again, I'm not going to spoil the interview by telling you Charlie's secrets. He'll tell you himself in the interview, but certainly there are courses for horses, as they say, and depending on what you want to shoot, one of these methods or the other may be better, and that's what most advanced macro photographers end up doing. If they have an interest in smaller and smaller stuff, they like to shoot pond scum or snowflakes, for that matter, end up building a second rig, a vertical rig, that allows them to do the stuff that you can't do horizontal, and vice versa. So as you get more advanced, you end up kind of blurring the lines, and at the end of the day, I guess we're all micro photographers to some extent or another. Just some of you are way better than others, like me, and yeah, I know many of you, most of you are better than me, but wait till you see the rest of Charlie's stuff if you want to see somebody who's going to make you feel like you need to do some more practice. Macro photography often involves getting the subject in some kind of context. We talk a lot, and I talk a lot anyway, about backgrounds and using backgrounds to create a mood or a feel to bounce the subject off, so that you're telling more of a story. It's very hard to tell a story viewing a subject, when it fills the frame under a microscope, then it's more about celebrating the fine details that you can't see with the naked eye. A good example is what I have under the microscope right now. It's a computer chip that I pried out of something. There's a potential to tell a story with a photograph of a computer chip, but it'll be fairly difficult, and not many people will get it. Not so if you're taking a picture of a ladybug climbing onto a leaf, for example. There's a lot that you can work with there. So this is typical of what a photomicrographer might be looking at. And here it's all about getting the clarity to see the details that you otherwise couldn't see and capture. The workflow for a macro photographer and a photomicrographer are also subtly different. When I'm photographing a tiger beetle, the whole tiger beetle, by the time I have that beetle pinned and cleaned and posed and situated on my rig, and I have the lights set up, I know what I'm shooting, how I want it to look, how I want the lights to interact with it, and how I want the background to supplement or complement it. I already know that. I just have to do it. Oftentimes, when Charlie sits down at the microscope with a blob of stuff that he's scraped out of the bottom of his jar from the seaside, he doesn't know what he's going to find. And he will start to go through his subject looking for the things that appeal to him. Rotifers, for example, and these incredible cyst-forming walled amoebae that I will show pictures of in the interview. He goes looking for stuff, but he doesn't necessarily know what he's going to find, because you can't even... I can see a tiger beetle. Even with my eyes, I can see a tiger beetle if I hold it right there. You cannot see most of the stuff that Charlie's photographing. It's just, well, it's microscopic. How about that? So the workflow for him may involve hours of peering through the microscope and coming up empty-handed. If that would have happened to me, if I were to go to all that trouble with the tiger beetle and then spend 2 hours before I didn't take a picture, I'd be doing something wrong. But that's not the case with micro. You have to, a lot of the time, you have to think on your feet. You have to be ready to react to what you find and know how to capture it in its best possible light. I was looking at pond scum just before I moved up here. I don't know how I got it all over me, but I was looking through some blobs of pond scum on a slide, and I found something I don't see very often was 2 hydra side to side on a piece of grass. And they appeared to be interacting in some way. Their tentacles would touch and then withdraw, and they seemed to be aware of one another. And I could not, for the life of me, in the vertical orientation, get that shot composed before the 2 hydras just fell asleep and lost interest in one another. So I missed it. There is a skill to being able to capture the kind of images that Charlie does on the fly when he doesn't even know what he's going to see sometimes when he goes under there. Underwear? That was a strange slip of the tongue, wasn't it? All right, so typically then, the photomicrographer is looking at things like microorganisms or individual cells or tiny structures. One of Charlie's fantastic tricks that he uses is to take flowers that have not yet budded. Is that what you call it when they open up? No, that's when they flower. But it's before they go like that. He takes them and cuts them in half and then photographs very, very close up the surface on the inside. So you see flowers before they become flowers, and the detail is just stupendous. So there's all kinds of small structures that become fascinating to these folks. And that would be a different kind of workflow, a little bit more like mine, but still experience and knowing how to set things up and you know, being on top of your game, that makes it all a little bit more manageable. Both of these arts are similar, and there's a lot about them that appeal to the same people, but they're both very different. And I usually recommend that photographers who are interested in photomicrography develop those skills alongside their photography skills, because they really are different, and as similar as the results may look when you're just looking at the pictures, the mindset and everything is a bit different. So I usually try to teach people both at the same time, but as different subjects. There are different things to learn, different things to be mindful of. Plenty of overlap, once again, lighting being the big one, but the camera, you know, in photomicrography becomes relatively unimportant. For most setups, a smaller sensor is a good thing, because very, very few microscopic setups are going to give you the kind of coverage you need for full frame or larger. So unless you like to crop in, oftentimes you'll be using smaller sensor, which is why a lot of the microscope cameras have very small sensors, you know, bigger than a cell phone, but way smaller than an APS-C camera. So smaller cameras, oftentimes, they don't have to be super expensive, because you don't need all of the things that make a gorgeous camera gorgeous. You need something that has a very high quality sensor, something that can record fantastic pictures, sometimes quite quickly, so that's handy to have. But you don't need a lot of the stuff that a modern digital camera will give you, just because you wouldn't use it. One exception to that is the mirrorless thing. I would not even attempt to do any kind of photomicrography. I've already done it. I've already experimented with it in the past using a mirrored camera. It's just impossible. The amount of vibration that a mirror makes, in fact, just the amount of vibration those whole cameras make when anything moves in them, is impossible to work with at high magnification. So mirrorless cameras, one exception to that, pretty much a must. So they both use cameras. They both use subtly different cameras, and we certainly tend to emphasize the camera and oftentimes the lens far more in macro photography, whereas it's the microscope that's everything in micro. Let me see. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Last week I got so excited with a subject similar to this that was extremely exciting to me. I just kept going and ran out of time. I don't want to do that tonight, because I know there are a lot of people here, and I want to see what questions you have before I run out of time. I felt so rude last week in having to cut off the festivities so abruptly. So let me get to the thingamajig where they would be, and let me see. Yeah, okay. So Alistair was over in my whatchamacallit program, sending me messages that I didn't see. So let me see if there's any that I need to respond to here. Good evening, Alistair, and thank you so much for doing this, as always. Hi also to Bud, who is over there. Have you guys been watching, did you see the most recent Bud Parrott after stack? It came out in video form just yesterday, I think. Well worth watching. Except the bit where I'm talking. You can just skip ahead in that, because I was out of my depth. Interestingly, for those of you who were there and participated in AfterStack, within 20 minutes of AfterStack being over, I experienced the first chill of what turned out to be a 24-hour influenza that had me in bed, prostate, for the rest of the day. I was miserable. So that will be my excuse for why my editing advice was so lackluster. Angie is here. And nope, Angie was here. I'm reading messages from a month ago. Just bear with me. Are the cross-polarization 3D files finished and available? They are finished. They are not yet available. I'm going to hold on to the files until the people that I have promised the device to get their devices, because I want them to have them, and then I will publish the files. I have invented. I didn't really honestly invent any of this. I learned it by looking at by looking at other things, and then tried to copy it in 3D. But I was having trouble with my device that I use for holding the polarizing film. The idea is it needs to be turnable, hence the big divots in it. It's going to be held inside. I'm not going to give the thing away. I'm just going to show you little parts of it. It's held inside a tray like this that will allow you, with a fingertip, to turn it so that you can reorient the polarizer. So far, so good. But the way I had been doing it was using two pieces that would sandwich together. Let me show you how. Two pieces that would sandwich together that would hold the film in between, and that would hold it, stop it from flopping around or falling out. I didn't like that because it was too many pieces to print and it was too fiddly. So what I came up with last night, I had a flash of inspiration, and I thought, I've had to remove these things from devices. Why don't I just print a little ring that can go into a dovetail that I print in the holder, and let the thing just spring open. Hang on, I've got to put it in first. Let the thing just spring open under its own power and hold the filter stuff in. And it actually works. It really does. You just cut the disc to size, put it in there, and that way when I give these out to folks, they'll be all assembled and they'll have the filters in there and everything. But if they ever want to change it, it will be easy to do because they just have to pop that out and put a new one in. So that kind of thing has been endlessly fascinating for me, finding solutions for problems that I didn't even know were problems. I'll show you one more. I was going to, initially in my plans, for those of you who've seen it, seen the multiple attempts I've made to draw this thing in 360. Initially, what I was going to do was have the ring held in by an arm. And you can see the problem already with the arm. It has absolutely no rigidity, no resilience to it. But the idea was that you would open it up. This is part of a stack, so this would drop right in, and then you could close that, and that would hold it in place. And it had a window in it so that you could get your finger in and turn it. But this, obviously, I didn't know that it was going to be that wonky, that flimsy, so it's useless. It won't stay closed, it won't do anything. So I had to design it differently. And what I came up with was this. Now this does exactly the same thing, only it's rigid. It has a stop at the bottom. It won't turn beyond there. But when you put it back, it holds the ring in place and allows you to turn it from above. How do you stop this thing from opening and closing all on its own? With that hole there. Do you know that you can buy magnets this small. That's 100 of them. I'm not kidding. That's 2,500 of them for $8. They're the smallest magnets I've ever seen. But just by putting one of these little things in a 3D printed recess, oh dear, it's disappeared. Yeah, you just put one of these mini magnets into that hole, and then another one on the corresponding side, and this thing snaps shut when you're through with it, and it actually holds it closed. I haven't been able to sleep. I've been so excited by these different, I call them inventions. They're not inventions, they're just ideas that actually turned out to work. But that's the most exciting one of all, is my little magnetic doors. So there are bunches of other things that you'll see in the video when I make it, and if you get one of these, you'll be able to see all of the bits and pieces. When it's all finished and said and done, I will put the cleaned up 3D files over on the Walls app, and you can take them and print them. But honestly, there are the main Fusion 360 file for the actual device, and all of the parts that are in it is gigantic. There are 18 separate parts to it, and they're all blown out. Yeah, you'll see. You better. I think probably what I'll do is ask Larry to help me clean it up before I show it to you. I mean, they all work, all the things print fine, but I might want you I might want to get it looking a little bit more professional. It got a bit scrappy at the end, but anyway. So they will be available soon. Thank you for asking. I better use shorter answers to these questions because I just used up all my time on one question. But anyway, Bud and Alistair, thank you so much for keeping track of everything out there. John McVoy, how about using your paint sprayer for spraying water for cleaning insects? Oh, that was from the other day. I was going to say, I read that somewhere before. Actually, we were talking about that, about using an airbrush to dry insects. I would caution against using the same device with water to wash the insects. The reason is air is not particularly dense, and you can blow on the insect quite hard and not damage it. A spray of water under 20 psi or whatever those things put out could remove parts of the insect, so I'd be very careful with that. I know that question was from before, but there you go, there's a free answer. So look, we're out of time, and once again, look at you guys. There has been 10 pages of notes and chit chat and questions, and questions that I didn't get to, and I'm so sorry. I hate that I do that, but then again, I wouldn't get to talk about anything else if I didn't do that. So, yeah. I'll do as I always do. I'll read through these now, and if there's anything super important, I'll either address it on Thursday or I'll get back to you directly. Those of you who are waiting on a response for me to your message on the Walls app should have got them yesterday. If it was on the Patreon app, I'm going back over there now to finish those messages, so you'll get a response right away. And if it's email, you'll never get a response because I don't get to my email anymore. There isn't enough time in the day. The Walls app and the Patreon app I respond to, and the messages I get from here. So we're out of time. Can you believe how fast that went? Competition next month, My Tiny Universe. Think tiny people doing something that you know, using spades or something. Come up with something unique and novel. And don't forget how important the title is. It's a chance for you to tell me stuff about your picture that I might not otherwise know. Thank you so much for letting me do this, guys. I'm so grateful that I get to do this every day and every night and every weekend. You don't know what it's like having a job where that actually is a joke, that you do it every waking minute because that's what you want to do. So thank you so much. We'll call it there, and I will see you on Thursday for part 2 of this, which is going to be lots of examples, I hope, and lots of pictures to look at. And I think I've said all I can say, and I'm starting to lose my voice. So thank you for coming. Have a great week ahead, and give me a like if you don't mind. Give me a like if you do mind, and just don't tell anybody you did it. I will see you on Thursday, if not before. Until then, good evening.